What if the very people sworn to protect and serve used their power to humiliate and degrade instead? What if a man, minding his own business, was forced to the ground like a criminal, ordered to do push-ups like a child, just to satisfy the cruel amusement of corrupt cops? But here's the thing. They messed with the wrong man. They had no idea who he really was. By the time the sun rose the next day, those same officers would be stripped of their badges, disgraced, and left begging for mercy. But how? What happened in those intense 24 hours? Trust me, you don't want to miss this. This story is packed with suspense, action, and a twist that will leave you speechless. Before we begin, let me ask you this: have you ever seen or heard about police officers abusing their power like this? What would you do if you were in this man's position? Let me know in the comments, and hey, if you love stories that expose injustice and leave you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Now, let's get into it. Because revenge is coming. The late-night air was thick with tension, the streets dimly lit by flickering street lamps. A lone man, dressed in a black athletic hoodie and joggers, walked down a quiet alley, minding his own business. His name was Daniel Cross, a man who moved with a quiet confidence, his sharp eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. Unbeknownst to him, two patrol cops in a black and white squad car were watching from across the street. Officers Ricky Nolan and Travis Boone, both notorious for their bullying tactics, smirked as they spotted Daniel. To them, he was just another target. "Let's have some fun," Nolan muttered, nudging Boone. With a sudden screech of tires, the squad car swerved, cutting off Daniel's path. The red and blue lights flashed aggressively as both officers stepped out. Boone grinned, his hand resting on his baton. "Where you headed this late, boy?" Nolan sneered. Daniel stopped, his expression unreadable. "Just taking a walk." Boone scoffed. "Yeah. In this neighborhood? You must think you're real slick." Daniel didn't flinch. He had dealt with bullies before. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said evenly, but Nolan and Boone were. "You look suspicious," Nolan said, stepping closer. "Maybe you're hiding something." "Hands where I can see, em." Daniel complied, his movements controlled. "I'm clean. I don't have anything on me." Boone snorted. "We'll be the judge of that." Without warning, Nolan grabbed Daniel's arm and twisted it, forcing him to his knees. Boone pressed his baton against Daniel's back. "You ever heard of street justice?" Boone chuckled. "Since you look like you work out, let's see how tough you really are. Give me 50 push-ups. Now." Daniel's jaw clenched. "What? You deaf?" Nolan smirked. "You do what we say, or we'll find something illegal on you real quick." Daniel took a deep breath. He could snap both of them in seconds, but that wasn't his way. Not yet. Instead, he dropped into position and started pushing. 1, 2, 3. Boone kicked his ribs. Faster. Daniel gritted his teeth and kept going. His muscles burning. 10, 11, 12. The humiliation boiled inside him, but he remained calm. Behind them, another patrol car pulled up. Officers Duke Reynolds and Carl Briggs stepped out, laughing as they saw what was happening. Well, Reynolds chuckled. "We got ourselves a workout session." "Cross-training for criminals," Boone mocked. Briggs pulled out his phone and started recording. "This one's gonna be gold." Daniel kept pushing, the laughter ringing in his ears. 47, 48, 49, 50. He pushed up and stood, his breaths controlled, his eyes locked onto Nolan's. "You happy now?" he asked, his voice cold. "Yeah," Nolan smirked. "But I think we should go for another round." Before they could react, Daniel moved, fast. He twisted, snatching Nolan's baton and smashing it against the cop's ribs in a single motion. Nolan stumbled back, wheezing. Boone lunged, but Daniel pivoted and drove an elbow into his jaw, sending him sprawling. The other two officers drew their guns. Gunshots exploded into the night. Daniel dived behind a parked car as bullets ricocheted off the metal. Reynolds and Briggs advanced, their weapons aimed. "Stay down." Briggs shouted. Daniel wasn't planning on it. He grabbed Boone's fallen baton and hurled it, striking Reynolds in the wrist. The cop yelped, dropping his weapon. More gunfire erupted. Daniel rolled low, grabbed Nolan by the collar, and yanked him up as a human shield. "Stop shooting, damn it." Nolan yelled. Briggs hesitated. Daniel moved. He launched Nolan forward, then sprinted toward a fire escape. He's getting away. Boone shouted. Daniel leapt, grabbing the metal ladder and hauling himself up in seconds. More bullets whizzed past, but he kept climbing. From the rooftop, he looked down at the 4 officers scrambling below. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Tomorrow, Daniel murmured. You're done. The city skyline stretched out before Daniel as he crouched atop the rooftop, his heart pounding but his mind razor-sharp. Below, the 4 cops were still scrambling, shouting into their radios, "He's on the rooftop. Call it in." Boone barked, Briggs cursed. "We need backup now." Daniel smirked. Backup wouldn't help them. Not after tonight. He moved like a shadow, sprinting across the rooftop, leaping effortlessly from one building to the next. Years of training had conditioned his body for situations like this, situations where survival depended on speed, strength, and precision. By the time a swarm of police cars flooded the streets below, Daniel had already slipped into the darkness. 20 minutes later, Daniel stood inside his apartment, staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His knuckles were scraped, his ribs ached where Boone had kicked him, but none of that mattered. What mattered was tomorrow. He pulled out his phone and made a single call. "It's me." A deep voice on the other end responded instantly. "You need it done." "Yes," Daniel said. "First thing in the morning." There was silence, then a low chuckle. "Consider it done." Daniel hung up. Tomorrow, they would regret everything. Morning, the police station, the precinct was alive with noise. Phones rang, officers bustled around, and the smell of stale coffee lingered in the air. Nolan, Boone, Reynolds, and Briggs sat in Captain Harris's office, trying to explain the fiasco from the night before. "Let me get this straight," Harris said, rubbing his temples. "You detained a man for no reason, forced him to do push-ups, recorded it, and then tried to arrest him after he fought back." Boone shifted uncomfortably. "We were just messing with him. He was acting suspicious." Harris's face darkened. "You forced a civilian to do push-ups in the middle of the street?" Nolan sighed. "Look, Captain, he attacked us first. He attacked you because you were humiliating him." Harris snapped. "And then you opened fire in a residential neighborhood?" Briggs leaned forward. "Captain, you don't get it. This guy was fast, dangerous. He wasn't just some random jogger. He had training. Military, maybe even special forces." Harris frowned. "And you didn't think to mention that last night?" Before anyone could respond, the office door swung open. A tall, sharply dressed man in a dark gray suit stepped in. His piercing gaze swept over the room, landing on Nolan and Boone. "Who the hell are you?" Harris demanded. The man pulled out a badge. "FBI, my name is Agent Cole Mercer," he said smoothly. "I'm here regarding an official complaint filed against officers Nolan, Boone, Reynolds, and Briggs." The room went dead silent. "What complaint?" Nolan blurted out. Mercer smirked. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough." Harris turned to the officers. "What the hell did you do?" Before anyone could answer, a uniformed officer burst in, looking pale. Captain. You might want to see this." Outside the station, the 4 officers stepped out of the precinct, following Harris to where a large black SUV was parked across the street. A man leaned against it, arms crossed. "Daniel Cross." Boone's stomach dropped. "This guy." Reynolds muttered. Daniel smirked as they approached. "Morning, gentlemen." "What the hell is this?" Nolan snapped. Daniel turned to Mercer. "Shall we?" Mercer nodded and handed Harris a folder. "Effective immediately. These 4 officers are placed under internal investigation. Their badges and weapons are to be surrendered pending the results." "What?" Boone shouted. "This is bullshit." Reynolds' face twisted in rage. "On whose orders?" Daniel stepped forward, his eyes cold. "Mine." Boone's eyes widened. "Who the hell are you?" Daniel leaned in. "You'll find out soon enough." Gunfire erupts. Before anyone could react, gunfire tore through the air, bullets shattered car windows, sending officers diving for cover. "Sniper!" Mercer yelled, drawing his gun. Daniel moved instantly, grabbing Boone and using him as a shield just as a bullet whizzed past. The precinct erupted in chaos. More cops rushed outside, weapons drawn, scanning the rooftops. Daniel's eyes darted up. He spotted the shooter, a masked figure perched on a distant rooftop, adjusting his scope. "This isn't random," Daniel muttered. Mercer fired back, but the sniper was already on the move, disappearing into the skyline. "Who the hell is targeting us?" Nolan shouted. Daniel released Boone and stepped back. "This is bigger than you," Daniel said. "And trust me, this is just the beginning." The aftermath of the attack left the precinct in chaos. Officers scrambled for cover, the air thick with tension as the sound of distant sirens wailed. The shattered glass from police cruisers crunched under boots as Mercer barked orders, demanding immediate lockdown procedures. Daniel Cross, however, stood unnervingly calm, his eyes locked on the rooftop where the sniper had vanished. His mind worked fast. This wasn't just a random attack. Someone wanted him, and these cops silenced. Where'd he go? Boone gasped, still reeling from the near-death experience. "Gone," Daniel muttered. "But he'll be back." Captain Harris shoved through the crowd, his face red with fury. "What the hell is going on here? Who's shooting at my damn station?" Daniel turned to Mercer. "Get these four inside before they get picked off one by one." Nolan pointed an accusing finger. "You think we're just gonna follow orders from you?" Mercer narrowed his eyes. "Unless you want to get your head blown off, I suggest you shut up and move." With hesitation, the four officers were herded back inside. Daniel followed, his instincts still on high alert. Whoever had taken that shot wasn't an amateur. It was a message. Inside the precinct, interrogation room, the walls were stark gray, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Nolan, Boone, Reynolds, and Briggs sat on one side of the table, scowling. Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. While Mercer paced, "This isn't just about last night," Mercer said. "That sniper was waiting for something, or someone." He turned to Daniel. "You have any enemies we should know about?" Daniel smirked. "Plenty." Boone scoffed. "Figures." Daniel's expression darkened. "You idiots have no idea what you've stepped into. You thought last night was just some game. Forcing a man to do push-ups, humiliating him in the street." His voice dropped, lethal. "You pissed off the wrong person." Briggs shifted uncomfortably. "What the hell are you?" Daniel leaned forward. "You really want to know?" Before he could continue, the lights flickered, then, an explosion rocked the building, sending a shockwave through the precinct. The interrogation room door burst off its hinges, smoke and debris flooding in. Daniel hit the ground instantly, instincts taking over. "Get down." Gunfire followed, automatic weapons, close range, shadowy figures in tactical gear poured in, their weapons blazing. A full-scale assault. Daniel reacted fast. He grabbed the overturned chair and hurled it, striking one of the attackers square in the chest. The man staggered, giving Daniel just enough time to lunge and snap his wrist, prying the rifle from his grip. The room exploded into chaos. Nolan and Boone scrambled for their sidearms. Reynolds fired first, dropping an attacker, while Briggs flipped the table for cover. Mercer moved like a professional, drawing his pistol and eliminating two more before they could reach the hallway. Daniel, now armed, pivoted and let off a burst of fire, taking down two men in rapid succession. "Who the hell are these guys?" Nolan shouted. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed Boone by the collar and yanked him just as a spray of bullets riddled the wall where he had been standing. "We have to move." Mercer barked. The remaining officers rushed into the hallway, ducking behind desks as more attackers breached through the front entrance. Daniel reloaded his weapon. "Stay close. We take them out, or we don't make it out." A masked assailant charged at Reynolds with a combat knife. The cop barely had time to react before Daniel intercepted, twisting the man's wrist and driving his own blade into his throat. Blood sprayed as the attacker collapsed. Boone's hands were shaking. "This is insane." Daniel grabbed his shirt. "Get your head in the game, or you'll be dead in 5 minutes." Nolan, sweat dripping from his face, fired wildly. "We need backup." Mercer shouted over the gunfire. "Phones are jammed. We're on our own." Daniel glanced toward the front entrance. More vehicles were pulling up, reinforcements. "We need to get out of here," he muttered. Mercer nodded. "There's an emergency exit in the back." Daniel motioned toward the others. "Move, now." The group pushed forward, firing as they went. Daniel grabbed a fallen attacker's rifle, checked the ammo, and unleashed suppressive fire. The enemies ducked, giving them just enough time to break into a sprint. Briggs kicked open a side door, and the fresh air hit them like a wave, but then, tires screeched, two black SUVs skidded into the alley, blocking their escape. More armed men poured out, weapons raised. They were surrounded. Daniel exhaled slowly, his finger tightening on the trigger. This just got interesting. The alley was a death trap. Two black SUVs blocked the only exit, their tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. Armed men in tactical gear fanned out, rifles raised, fingers poised on the triggers. Daniel counted 8, no, 10 attackers. Well trained. Well armed. But not invincible. He glanced at Mercer, who was already moving, eyes scanning for weaknesses. The four cops, Nolan, Boone, Reynolds, and Briggs, were panicked, their hands slick with sweat as they gripped their sidearms. Drop your weapons. A voice barked from one of the SUVs. Daniel smirked. Not happening. Instead, he moved first. In a single motion, he grabbed Reynolds by the back of his vest and yanked him down just as the first shots rang out. A bullet whizzed through the space where the officer's head had been moments ago, then chaos erupted. Daniel swung his rifle up and opened fire, his shots precise and deadly. The first attacker went down before he could react, blood spraying against the alley wall. Mercer dove behind a dumpster, firing off calculated shots. Two more assailants dropped, their bodies slamming against the pavement. The four officers weren't as fast. Boone hesitated, his gun trembling in his grip. That was a mistake. A masked enemy rushed him, boots slamming into his gut. Boone choked, doubling over as the attacker raised his rifle. Daniel intervened. He lunged, grabbing the barrel and twisting it aside just as the weapon discharged. The muzzle flash blinded Boone as a bullet tore into the wall behind him. Without missing a beat, Daniel yanked a combat knife from his belt and plunged it into the attacker's neck. The man gurgled, his hands clawing at the blade as he stumbled back. Daniel ripped the knife free and spun. Another enemy charged. Daniel ducked low, dodging a swipe from a baton, then exploded upward with a brutal elbow strike. The attacker's head snapped back. Daniel followed up with a swift palm strike to the throat. The man crumpled instantly, gunfire still raged around them. Nolan, finally snapping out of his panic, managed to fire 3 rounds. One bullet caught an enemy in the shoulder. Another clipped his leg. The third, straight through the skull. The body collapsed. Briggs and Reynolds huddled behind a stack of wooden crates, popping off rounds as best they could. They weren't great shots, but they were holding their own. Then, just as the tide began to turn, the SUV doors swung open. Out stepped a figure dressed in all black. No tactical vest, no rifle, just a single pistol holstered at his side. His walk was slow. Unbothered, Daniel froze. He knew that stride. The man stopped a few feet away, his face finally illuminated by the flickering street lamp. It was Roman Drax, the ghost from Daniel's past. Cross, Drax greeted, voice smooth as silk. Been a long time. Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened. Not long enough. Drax chuckled, glancing around at the carnage. Impressive work. Just like old times, huh? Mercer stepped forward, gun raised. Who the hell is this guy? Drax didn't even acknowledge him. His eyes were locked on Daniel. I have to say, Drax continued, when I heard some street cops humiliated Daniel Cross, I almost didn't believe it. The great ghost unit operative. Forced to do push-ups in the street. He shook his head in mock disappointment. You've gotten soft. Boone, still gasping from the fight, looked between them. What the hell is he talking about? Drax smirked. They don't know, do they? He turned back to Daniel. You never told them who you really are. Silence, then Drax's smirk vanished. In a blur, he reached for his pistol. Daniel moved faster. Before Drax could aim, Daniel fired. Boom, a single, perfect shot. Drax's gun was knocked clean out of his hand, spinning through the air before clattering to the pavement. For the first time, his face flickered with surprise. The alley went dead silent. Mercer, Boone, Nolan, and the others stood frozen. Eyes bouncing between Daniel and Drax. Drax stared at his now empty hand, then back at Daniel. Then, he laughed, a slow, amused chuckle. Still sharp, Drax admitted. But you know how this goes. I don't die that easily. Daniel didn't respond. Drax smirked, stepping back toward the SUV. This was just a preview, he promised. The real fun starts soon. He gave Daniel one last look before slipping into the vehicle. The SUVs peeled out, disappearing into the night. Silence returned. Boone was the first to speak. What the hell just happened? Daniel exhaled slowly, lowering his rifle, then he turned to Mercer. We need to talk. The alley was still thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood. The SUVs had vanished into the night, taking Roman Drax with them. The gunfight was over, but the tension remained. Mercer wiped sweat from his forehead, his pistol still raised as if expecting another ambush. Boone, Nolan, Reynolds, and Briggs stood stiff, their nerves fried from the chaos, but all eyes were on Daniel Cross. You want to tell us what the hell that was? Mercer asked, voice sharp. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He ejected the spent magazine from his rifle, slid in a fresh one, and checked the chamber. Always be ready. That man, Daniel finally said, is Roman Drax. A name you don't want to hear twice. Boone scoffed, still rattled. You say that like we're supposed to know who he is. Daniel turned, his eyes cold. If you did, you'd already be running. Silence. Mercer folded his arms. Then start talking. Daniel looked around. They were still too exposed. Not here. We need to move. Mercer hesitated but finally nodded. My place. It's off the grid. Daniel gave a curt nod. Then let's go. Now. Mercer's safe house. 1 hour later, the safe house was an old, abandoned garage on the outskirts of the city. Concrete walls, dim lighting, and a metal door reinforced with thick steel plates. It wasn't fancy, but it was secure. Inside, everyone gathered around a dusty wooden table. A single light bulb swaying above them. The tension was thick. Daniel leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You wanted answers, he said. Here they are. He exhaled. No turning back now. I used to work for a unit called Ghost. We handled missions that weren't supposed to exist. Black ops, government-sanctioned assassinations, things buried so deep even the president wouldn't hear about them. Boone blinked. You're joking. Daniel didn't flinch. No. I was one of their best. Until I wasn't. Nolan, still skeptical, narrowed his eyes. What happened? Daniel's jaw tightened. Memories resurfaced. Blood. Betrayal. A mission gone wrong. I left, he finally said. Walked away. Thought I buried my past. But Drax? He shook his head. He was my partner. And now he's back. Briggs frowned. Why now? Daniel looked at them. Because you 4 idiots put my name in the news. The realization hit, the video of them forcing Daniel to do push-ups. His face, his humiliation, it had gone viral. And Drax had seen it. You didn't just humiliate some random guy, Daniel said. You dragged a ghost out of hiding. And now, Drax isn't just here for me. He's here for all of us. A heavy silence, then, Mercer spoke. What does he want? Daniel's expression darkened. Drax never shows up without a reason. If he's here, it means something bigger is coming. Boone wiped his face. Still rattled. So what do we do? Daniel pushed off the wall. His voice was steel, we fight. The first strike, the plan was simple, find Drax before he found them. Mercer had a contact, an ex-informant who still had ears in the underworld. They arranged a meeting at an old shipping yard just outside the city. The team moved carefully. Daniel took point, Mercer behind him, while the 4 officers, now forced into a war they never expected, watched the perimeter. The informant, a wiry man named Cole, leaned against a rusted shipping container, cigarette dangling from his lips. I heard you were looking for Drax, Cole muttered. Bad idea. Daniel wasn't in the mood for games. Where is he? Cole exhaled smoke. Word is, he's setting up something big. A hit, maybe. Something with cops. The blood in Daniel's veins went ice cold. When? He demanded. Cole shrugged. Don't know. But if Drax is in town, it means someone's about to die. Before Daniel could press further, a shot rang out. Cole's head snapped back, a bullet tearing through his skull. He collapsed instantly, cigarette still burning between his fingers. Then, gunfire erupted. Ambush. Daniel dived for cover, bullets shredding through the shipping container beside him. "Get down!" Mercer roared, drawing his pistol. Boone and Nolan scrambled behind crates, returning fire blindly. Reynolds and Briggs weren't far behind. Daniel peeked out, 3 snipers on the rooftops, 4 more closing in from the ground. This wasn't just an attack. This was Drax's message. "You're too late." Daniel gritted his teeth. Not today. He moved fast, sliding out from cover. He fired 3 precise shots. 2 snipers dropped, their bodies crumbling. The last one tried to flee. Daniel wasn't feeling merciful. He raised his rifle, exhaled, and fired. The sniper pitched off the roof, hitting the ground with a sickening crunch. Meanwhile, Mercer was in the fight of his life. A masked attacker rushed him, swinging a crowbar. Mercer ducked, slammed his elbow into the man's gut, then finished with a brutal knee to the face. Boone, still shaken, almost got taken out, until Nolan yanked him aside and fired a kill shot straight to the enemy's chest. The gunfire slowed. Bodies littered the shipping yard. Daniel scanned the area, breathing heavily. They'd won, but it wasn't over. Mercer, panting, looked at Daniel. This wasn't just a hit. Daniel nodded, his gut twisting. It was a distraction. His eyes drifted to Cole's corpse. Drax wasn't just planning an attack. He was already in motion, and Daniel was running out of time. The air was thick with the stench of blood and gunpowder. Spent shell casings littered the ground. The echoes of gunfire had faded, leaving behind only the heavy breathing of men who had barely escaped death. Daniel reloaded his rifle, his mind racing. Drax was ahead of them. The ambush at the shipping yard wasn't an assassination attempt. It was a delay tactic, and it had worked. Daniel turned to Mercer. "We need to move. Now." Mercer nodded, adrenaline still surging through him. "Where?" Daniel's eyes flicked down to Cole's lifeless body. His last words, "Drax is setting up something big. A hit, maybe. Something with cops." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Where's the precinct?" Reynolds looked confused. "What? Where is your damn police precinct?" Daniel snapped. Mercer's eyes widened. "You think?" "I know." Daniel's voice was steel. "Drax isn't just after me. He's making a statement. And he's using your department to do it." Boone swallowed hard. "Jesus Christ. No time for prayers," Daniel growled. "Get in the car. If we don't stop him now, the next time you see your fellow officers, they'll be in body bags." The race against time, they piled into Mercer's black SUV, tires screeching as they tore out of the shipping yard. Daniel rode shotgun, gripping his rifle tightly. His mind calculated the possibilities. Drax didn't just attack at random, he planned. He was surgical. Precise. Brutal, which meant by the time they got to the precinct, the operation had already begun. Mercer's knuckles were white against the steering wheel. "What do we do when we get there?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "We kill every last one of them." Silence filled the SUV. Boone, Reynolds, and Nolan shared uneasy glances. They had been cops their whole lives. Trained to maintain order. Not to engage in a full-scale war, but this wasn't police work. This was survival, the first sign of death. As they neared the precinct, Daniel's worst fears were confirmed. Smoke billowed into the night sky. The faint orange glow of flames flickered from the second floor, then, gunfire. "Shit." Mercer floored the gas pedal. They skidded to a stop just outside the parking lot. The scene before them was carnage. 2 squad cars were overturned, their bodies riddled with bullet holes. Officers lay sprawled on the pavement, some moving, some not, and standing in the center of it all, Drax's men, armed, armored, and waiting. The battle begins. Before the SUV even stopped moving, Daniel threw the door open and rolled out, rifle already raised. His first 3 shots dropped a gunman near the front steps. Mercer and the others weren't far behind. They were cops. They knew how to shoot. Bullets tore through the air. Reynolds ducked behind an abandoned patrol car, firing 3 rapid shots. One of Drax's men collapsed, clutching his throat. Boone and Nolan moved together, using the vehicles as cover, laying down suppressive fire. Daniel, however, was different. He was trained for this. He moved like a ghost, weaving between shadows, his shots landing with pinpoint accuracy. He dropped another gunman with a clean headshot, then pivoted, firing twice into the chest of an attacker trying to flank Mercer. The battle raged, but they were gaining ground. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. Silence. Smoke drifted from the barrels of their weapons. Bodies lay scattered across the parking lot. Mercer exhaled shakily. Did we get them all? Daniel's gut told him otherwise. This was too easy. His grip on his rifle tightened. Then, a slow clap. A familiar voice echoed from the precinct entrance. Well. Still got that killer instinct, huh, Cross? Daniel's blood ran cold. Roman Drax stepped forward, dressed in full tactical gear, a custom-made rifle slung over his shoulder, a pistol holstered at his hip, and he wasn't alone. Behind him stood 6 more men, but what made Daniel's stomach twist wasn't the armed men, it was the hostages, 5 officers, bound and gagged, forced to their knees. Drax grinned. I knew if I made enough noise, you'd come running. Daniel's hands curled into fists. Drax gestured toward the hostages with his pistol. So here's the deal, old friend. You put down your weapons, and maybe, I don't paint this parking lot red with cop blood. Daniel didn't answer immediately. His mind worked fast. 6 men. Well trained. Well armed. Hostages in the crossfire. He had one chance. Drax tilted his head. Tick-tock, Cross. Daniel's voice was calm. You don't have to do this, Drax. Drax laughed. Oh, but I do. See, you cost me a lot when you walked away. My reputation. My future. And now. He spread his arms. Now I get to return the favor. Daniel's heart pounded. There had to be a way, and then, he saw it, a single weakness, the sniper perched on the rooftop, covering Drax's position. The moment Daniel saw him, he knew, that was his opening. Daniel took a slow breath, then, in a blur of motion, he grabbed Boone's pistol from its holster, spun, and fired a single shot. The sniper jerked back, his rifle tumbling from the rooftop. Drax's eyes widened. Son of a, chaos erupted. Daniel moved first, throwing himself forward, rolling behind a patrol car as gunfire exploded. Mercer and the others reacted instantly, firing into Drax's men, forcing them into cover. Daniel's pulse was steady. He locked onto his next target, took him down. Another enemy tried to flank them. Boone caught him with a brutal chest shot. Drax, still standing, roared in frustration. Kill them. Daniel didn't stop moving. He fought like a ghost. He slid behind cover, reloading in one smooth motion. He popped up, fired 2 more rounds. Another attacker fell. Mercer rushed forward, tackling a gunman to the ground, slamming his pistol into the man's face. Reynolds and Nolan freed the hostages, cutting their bindings while Briggs provided cover fire. The battle was turning, and then, Drax made a mistake. He tried to run. Daniel saw it. This ends now. He raised his rifle, took aim, and fired. The bullet ripped through the air, striking Drax in the leg. He stumbled forward, a howl of pain escaping his lips as he collapsed onto the pavement. His rifle clattered to the ground, out of reach. Daniel rose from his cover, rifle trained on Drax. His heart was steady. His mission was almost complete. The remaining gunmen, seeing their leader down, panicked. Reynolds, Nolan, and Mercer wasted no time. A hail of gunfire tore through the remaining attackers. One by one, they dropped. The battle was over. Only Drax remained. He clutched his bleeding leg, face twisted in agony. He glared up at Daniel. You should have stayed gone, Cross. Daniel stepped closer, his boots crushing shattered glass beneath them. Funny. I was thinking the same about you. Drax's hand darted toward his pistol. Daniel moved first. A brutal kick sent the gun spinning out of Drax's grasp. Drax grunted, rolling onto his back, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The precinct was in ruins. Smoke drifted in the air. The scent of gunpowder and death lingered. Sirens blared in the distance. Reinforcements were coming. Daniel loomed over Drax, his rifle aimed at the man's head. You think you've won? Drax wheezed, spitting blood. You're just a killer, Cross. Always have been. Daniel's expression was unreadable. But inside, he was calm. Cold. Calculated. He had one last move to play. The reckoning. Mercer approached. His face grim. What do we do with him? Daniel didn't take his eyes off Drax. You all need to get out of here. Boone's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Daniel crouched beside Drax. You remember who I am, don't you? Drax smirked weakly. Of course. You're the man who left. The man who betrayed everything we built. Daniel shook his head. Wrong. I'm the man who never stopped watching. Drax's smirk faded, Daniel leaned in closer, his voice low. Dangerous, I never lost my connections. And you? You just declared war on a federal agency. Drax's face twitched. You're bluffing. Daniel smiled. Am I? Behind him, the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder. Mercer stiffened. That's not backup. Daniel rose. Nope. Black SUVs skidded to a stop. Men in tactical gear poured out, their weapons drawn. One man, dressed in a sharp black suit, stepped forward. Agent Richard Graves, his gaze flicked to Daniel. You always did know how to make a mess. Daniel shrugged. Had to draw him out. Graves looked at Drax, bleeding on the ground. Roman Drax. You're under arrest for terrorism, conspiracy, and murder. Drax's face twisted in fury. You set me up. Daniel smirked. No, Drax. You set yourself up. Graves signaled his men. They hauled Drax to his feet, slapping cuffs on him. Drax struggled, his eyes burning with rage. This isn't over. Cross. Daniel's expression remained cold. Oh, it is. You just don't know it yet. As Drax was dragged away, Mercer turned to Daniel. What now? Daniel exhaled. Now. I keep my promise. The next day, the ultimate revenge, the sun rose over the city. The precinct was being rebuilt, but the real battle was about to unfold. Daniel sat across from Commissioner Bradley Carter. Carter was furious. You want me to fire how many officers? All of them, Daniel said coldly. Every cop who was in on it. Every officer who let it happen. Every single corrupt piece of trash still wearing a badge. Carter's jaw clenched. You can't, Daniel slid a thick file across the desk. Evidence, everything, tapes. Documents. Witness testimonies, the entire department was compromised. Carter skimmed through the file. His face turned pale. Daniel leaned forward. If you don't fire them, the feds will. And trust me, they won't stop there. Carter swallowed hard. He was trapped. Finally, his shoulders slumped. Fine. They're gone. Daniel stood, his mission complete. Drax was finished. The corrupt officers were terminated, and the men who had forced him to do push-ups in the dirt, they would never wear a badge again. As Daniel walked out of the commissioner's office, Mercer met him outside. It's done. Daniel nodded. Yeah. It's done. Mercer exhaled. You ever think about coming back? Daniel gave a small smile. No. But I'll always be watching. With that, he walked into the morning light, a ghost once more. Wow. What a story. These corrupt cops thought they could humiliate the wrong man and get away with it, but they had no idea who they were messing with. In just 24 hours, their entire world came crashing down. Justice was served, and karma hit hard. I hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think about how everything played out? Do you think they got what they deserved? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget, if you love powerful, action-packed stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so you never miss another one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.